Little Johnny likes to gamble. One day his dad gets a new job, so his family has to move to a new city. Johnny's dad thinks, I'll get a head start on Johnny's gambling. He calls the teacher and says, my son Johnny will be starting your class tomorrow, but he likes to gamble, so you'll have to keep an eye on him. The teacher says, okay, because she can handle it. The next day, little Johnny walks into class and hands the teacher an apple and says, hi, my name is Johnny. She says, yes, I know who you are. Johnny smiles and says, I bet you $10 you've got a mole on your ass. The teacher thinks that she will break his little gambling problem, so she takes him up on the bet. She pulls her pants down, shows him her ass, and there is no mole. That afternoon, little Johnny goes home and tells his dad that he lost $10 to the teacher and explains why. His dad calls the teacher and says, Johnny said that he bet you that you had a mole on your ass and he lost. The teacher says, yeah, and I think I broke his gambling problem. Johnny's dad laughs and says, no, you didn't. He bet me $100 this morning that he'd see your ass before the day was over. A lady called her gynecologist and asked for an emergency appointment. The receptionist said to come right in. She used to the office and was ushered right into an examination room. The doctor came in and asked about her problem. She was very shy about her emergency problem and asked the gynecologist to please examine her vagina. So the doctor started to examine her. He stuck up his head after completing his examination. I'm sorry, miss, he said, but removing that vibrator is going to involve a very lengthy, delicate, and expensive surgical operation. I'm not sure I can afford it, sighed the young woman. But while I'm here, could you please just replace the batteries? Little Johnny went to his first rodeo with his mom and dad. Dad went off to buy a beer, and little Johnny happened to spy the bull's cock flopping around beneath his belly. Mummy, Mummy, what's that long thing beneath the bull's belly? Johnny asks, pointing. Embarrassed, his mom looks away and mutters, oh, don't worry about that, Johnny. That's nothing. Dad comes back, and Mum goes off to use the washroom. Once Mommy is gone, little Johnny asks, Daddy, what's that long thing beneath the bull's belly? That's the bull's cock, son, his dad answers. He uses it to mount and fuck a cow. But Mommy said it was nothing, Johnny replied. Dad leans back with his hand behind his head and takes a sip of his beer. Son, I've spoiled that woman. Jack and Heather had been married for almost 45 years. Lovely couple. But Jack had this one bad habit that had always disgusted Heather. Every morning before getting out of bed, Jack would let out this thunderous, paint-peeling fart. Poor Heather would just cringe. Over the years, she had complained that Jack, you know, Jack, one of these days, you're going to fart your guts out. What are you going to do when that happens? Jack never took it seriously and just continued on with his morning release. So Heather decided to begin getting out of bed before Jack woke up. Well, Thanksgiving came along, and Heather was up extra early doing prep for that evening's dinner. As she was preparing the turkey, she came across the giblets and had a devious idea. She took the giblets, went upstairs to the bedroom, and carefully placed them in the back of Jack's boxes. With this done, she returned to the kitchen and carried on with her dinner preparations. About half an hour later, Heather heard this blood-curdling scream come from upstairs. She chuckled to herself. After a couple of minutes, she figured she had better go check in on Jack. As she walked past the bathroom in the upstairs hallway, she saw Jack kneeling naked beside the toilet, holding 2 fingers up in front of him. "What's wrong, Jack?" she asked, while trying to hold back her laughter. Jack turned toward Heather, a tear running down his cheek. "You were right, woman. My goodness, you were right. I actually farted my guts out this morning, but with sheer determination and these 2 fingers, I stuffed it all back in." A young man walks into a bar looking annoyed and sullen. "What's the matter, son?" asks an older patron. The young man sighs. "I have a girlfriend who's very nice and very pretty." "So? What's the problem?" "Actually, she's not just pretty. She's the most beautiful woman I've ever met in my life." "That sounds great. Not only that, she also adores me and wants to be close to me at all times. What could be better? The thing is, she's from a very religious family. She doesn't believe in sex before marriage. It's driving me crazy. When we get married, if we even get married, it's not going to be for another year or two. What am I going to do? I don't know how long I can take this anymore. The old man lets out a long whistle. I see. Well, son, let me tell you, when I was your age, I had a girlfriend just like that. Kind, sexy, loving, had a heart of an angel and a figure of a she-devil. She drove me wild like no other girl could, just the sight of her. And the thing is, son, she did believe in sex before marriage. Okay, so what happened? Well, son, what happened is we had sex. Lots of it. Sex in the morning, sex in the evening, sex in the barn, sex in the church, sex on the back porch, and sex in the woods. We did it in every position known to man and probably came up with a few new ones ourselves. Oh, it was great. It was like manna from heaven. And the more we made love, the more I fell in love with her. I knew then and there she was the one for me. Well, what happened then? I asked her to marry me, and she said yes, and we've been married ever since. That's 45 years and 14 days to this date. Oh, I see, said the boy. He looked at the man properly for the first time. He looked old, tired, and worn. He was stooping over the counter, and his eyes were joyless and apathetic. In fact, he looked like the saddest, most wretched creature in the entire bar. After a pause, the boy coughed awkwardly. Sir, can I just ask? You don't look very happy. So what really happened? Well, son, like I said, my wife believed in sex before marriage. But it just turns out she doesn't believe in sex after marriage. An eccentric philosophy professor gave a one-question final exam after a semester dealing with a broad array of topics. The class was already seated and ready to go when the professor picked up his chair, plopped it on his desk, and wrote on the board. Using everything we have learned this semester, prove that this chair does not exist. Fingers flew, erasers erased, notebooks were filled in furious fashion. Some students wrote over 30 pages in 1 hour, attempting to refute the existence of the chair. One member of the class, however, was up and finished in less than a minute. Weeks later, when the grades were posted, the rest of the group wondered how he could have gotten an A when he had barely written anything at all. His answer consisted of 2 words. What chair? At school one day, little Johnny's teacher asks the class to use the word contagious in a sentence. Cindy raises her hand. Yes, Cindy, she answers. I was at the dentist's office with my mom, and she said not to play with the toys in the waiting room because the other kids were contagious. Very good, Cindy, the teacher said. Anyone else want to try? Samantha raises her hand. Yes, Samantha, she answers. My dad tells me not to yawn because then everybody else yawns. He says yawning is contagious. Excellent work, Samantha. Very creative, the teacher praises. Okay, one more volunteer. Little Johnny raises his hand. Yes, Johnny? Well, he says, I was helping my dad in the yard last week, and we saw the neighbor painting his house. He was using a small brush, so I asked my dad, Daddy, why is he using such a small brush? And he says, I don't know, son, but it's going to take that contagious. My friends, if you want to watch other funny jokes, subscribe to the channel.